All right. We are back with another episode of the Real Estate Investing Club. I hope you guys are having a great day, whatever day it is for you and wherever you are. As always, it's Friday on the podcast, so we're bringing that Friday energy to you. This is going to be a cool episode. We're going into the short-term rental space. So all you guys out there who are interested in short-term rentals, Airbnbs, VRBOs, everything in that space, this is for you. We got Vincent Villani with us on the show from Airpreneur. He obviously a expert on the short-term space, and so that's what we're diving into. Vincent, thanks for hopping on the show.
Yeah, 100%, Gabe. Thanks so much for having me on. I love listening to the show. Honestly, what you're doing, you're building here something that's pretty special, and I know the kind of work that goes into like trying to find all these guests, find good stories. So I'm excited to be part of it today. Anyone who's tuning in, just do me a quick favor, leave a 5-star review for Gabe so he can keep bringing conversations like this to more people. I already left mine, so come join me. Cool?
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate that. Let's get it started. We always like starting with stories, and I'm sure you got a good one. So why don't you go back to the beginning of your story before you knew real estate and just tell us how you got started and then how you got here.
Yeah. So, Gabe, you know how like a lot of 9 to 5 professionals, like people that get into the W-2 world, they, get the itch to like want to create like a scalable passive income stream so they can like quit their job, control their time, reinvest in real estate. But then they like hit walls trying to figure out how to do that without like spending their life savings or creating like actually enough cash flow to where it actually impacts their lifestyle. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So usually they try to buy like their first investment property and might even make it to their second or third, but then they just can't seem to get enough cash flow to like back their time.
$200 cash flow on a door, and it's just like, how do I scale this?
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's not enough to impact their lifestyle, right? Without saving another 50 to 100K. So what I do is I help people launch profitable Airbnbs fast without having to buy real estate using arbitrage and co-hosting so they can finally make 5 to 10K a month on autopilot and buy back their time, right? But that's not where it all started for me. As a matter of fact, going back a few years, Gabe, I was working in corporate. And I think like many of the other guests that you've had on here, it was like I made a decent amount of money in corporate. I was relatively successful among my peers in corporate. And I was just like, is this it? Right. And then I got the itch to get into real estate because I thought it was the answer. And I listened to Bigger Pockets. I was a huge fan of that. Before I knew you existed, of course, right? And I thought I had this epiphany that like, hey, if I buy an investment property, all my problems will be solved and I'll be well on my way to being financially free. So I scrounged together in my mid-20s every dollar in my savings. It was like 60K to my name, right? And I buy this duplex. And I buy the duplex, and I think you already know where this is going. What ends up happening is property turned out to be a nightmare. I had every problem you can think of under the sun. I had like
that was
a
like my
rodent.
first deal.
Yeah, dude. It genuinely was just it was a property from hell, I like to say, but everything under the sun that you think of could have happened. Like I had a rodent infestation in the house with my tenants. I had a roach infestation in the house with my tenants. I had tenants that didn't keep the property clean, clearly, had a mold outbreak, massive kitchen renovation to try to remediate that, all this stuff. And then at the end of the day, yes, it's cash flowing $400 or $500 a month on paper, but guess where all that money went? Like it just went back into fixing all of the things that I just mentioned and then some. So 5, 6, 7 years later down the line, I'm still net zero on the property, and ironically, it's now being sold, in a couple of days, which is a relief. Point is, I was like, what else can I do? Because clearly this isn't generating the cash flow that I need to actually make an impact in my life. So a friend of mine introduced me to the idea of short-term rental arbitrage. So if anyone, I guess, listening is not familiar with the concept, very, very simple concept where I rent a property, furnish it, list it on Airbnb or similar short-term rental platforms, and then collect the difference in profit each month, okay? And at first I was very, skeptical of that idea, Gabe, because it just like, me coming from the world of real estate investing, like I want equity, I want ownership, I want this, I want that. And, a lease is only a multi-year relationship, right? So, but I decided to give it a shot because I was like, at this point, I really don't have capital left. I sunk it. So, we went ahead and dove into this world head first. And, by the end of year one, We went from 0 to about 19, 20 properties in this arbitrage model. And by year 2, we then pivoted into larger arbitrage projects involving, big apartment complexes and things like that. Now about 36, 38 units, producing well over 1.4 million in rev, which is super cool. So it worked, and it worked quickly. So that was kind of the Cliff Notes version of what happened the last 2-3 years, man.
Nice. No, that's awesome. 0 to 19 in 1 year. That's an accomplishment. That would be difficult to do. So let's dive into the nitty gritty of this specific model, arbitrage. Take us like when you were just learning about this strategy. How did you get the first few deals? How do you find the properties that you're renting? What are you looking for? How do you negotiate with the people that actually own the property? Take us to the nitty gritty of it.
Yeah, I'll give you the rundown. So, these are the biggest question marks for anybody in the world of arbitrage, and rightfully so, because we approach it from like an investor and a business mindset. So, have you ever heard of this term called the Burger King strategy?
No.
Okay. So I love this. One of the guys I learned how to analyze Airbnbs from years ago gave me this idea, and I just apply it to everything. So the Burger King strategy is this: McDonald's does all of this ridiculous research before they launch McDonald's, right? The demographic, the population, the future plans of the city, all this stuff. They know exactly why they're going to launch it on this corner.
Yeah.
So what does Burger King do? They say, hey, McDonald's did all the work. I'm just going to open up across the street. So,
oh, I didn't know that actually. Sounds like I have a Walmart strategy of investing. If Walmart is in an area, I have a lot more confidence in investing in a 20-mile radius of that Walmart, because they've done the research. They have a whole team of people deciding that the population here will grow and will support this department. So sounds similar. I like that.
From now on, we'll call it the Walmart strategy then. So, but so basically, we take that same application to like finding profitable, like potential properties, because that's like step one. Before you do anything, it's like, does the market work and do the properties work, right? Yep. So we basically take an approach of like, let's look at a market, let's see what people are already doing well on Airbnb, and just make sure that the rentals available in that market, the properties available for rent, match that criteria. So like renovation style. Are the winning properties, do they have pools? Are they relatively close to like, big locations and things like that. So we use a software called AirDNA for that. Yep. Now I will just take a quick detour here and a disclaimer. AirDNA has a pretty mixed reputation. I don't know if have you ever heard of this software?
Yeah. I mean, multiple people have mentioned it. I got like a lifetime subscription to Mashable, which is like similar to AirDNA, but it's not nearly as in depth. I've heard AirDNA, you have it really goes into the numbers behind short-term rentals.
I'm sure you could still get great results with I think you said Mashable, right? And at the end of the day, I think a lot of these softwares work, but the biggest problem, Gabe, is that there is a feature on AirDNA where you just type in an address and it spits out a number, and it's like, oh, like that's how much this property is going to make. And that is obviously the incorrect way to use anything. There's no magic bullet for any sort of investment strategy, right? Yeah. So the actual method that we take on that software, which I'm sure you could apply with your software, is let's look at the revenue data of properties nearby. And then when I go to find a rental property, I compare the attributes of that property to the other comps nearby, just like you would with a real estate investing project, right?
Yeah.
So then we make a much more accurate assessment on how much revenue the property would make based on that. And that was
looking for not only location, you're looking for amenities, like maybe this property has a view. Does this one also have a view? This property has a tennis court. Does this one also have a tennis court? That kind of thing.
Exactly. It's like, hey, here's a property that's making $100K on Airbnb right now. Why? Okay, they've got a pool. It's a 3-bedroom house. They've got nice renovation. Now I already know if I can find those 3 criterias, I'm going to be teed up to be in that 100K range, like to an extent, right?
Yeah.
So that's really
how do you? Sorry, I'm pausing you there. How do you first decide where you're looking? So if you already have chosen, you found comps for this area, probably a single zip code that you're looking in. How do you find that zip code to start with?
Yeah, great question. So I'll take a step back here too. Before we dive into any market, especially when it comes to the world of arbitrage, right? Because we're going to rent the property, get permission from the landlord, and then list it as a short-term rental, right? You're a non-owner, okay? So there are a few markets in the United States that will make your life very difficult if you try to do it there.
Hmm.
And my simple advice is just do not try to operate in those markets, right? Like nobody here is in the business of trying to fly under the radar of the law. And at the end of the day, if it's very, very complex and it needs to be owner occupied and it needs to be listed by the owner and all this other stuff, then just don't launch there, right? Like we're not going to target that market. Now, oftentimes, right on the radius of that market, you could find something that makes sense, right? So that's step one is just like, let's just make sure the market is digestible. And
Legally, you're not going to run into problems.
yes.
Yeah.
And there is another strategy you can take, even if there are some legal challenges called co-hosting, which I can break down a little bit. But mainly for the world of arbitrage, we're looking for like Gabe, like the world of arbitrage gets this reputation. Like I need to be able to find properties that cash flow 5, 6, 7K a month, right? That's like that's the expectation that's put out there by like, Airbnb gurus and like all this stuff, right? And in actuality, that is not the average deal. As a matter of fact, like what we just want to find are a handful of properties that'll make at least 1 to 3K per month in cash flow. And that's way more attainable than trying to find this secret gold mine. Yeah. So I digress, but kind of going back to what you asked, I wanted to set that foundation first. So now that we know that we're looking in a market that doesn't have a ton of regulations, and we're just kind of setting the expectation, I just need to find something that'll make 1 to 2K a month in cash flow. Then the strategy just becomes, okay, let's just find what's working nearby and then make sure that we can mimic that, right? And that's where those softwares come into play, where we can identify properties that meet that criteria. Make sense?
Yeah, it does. The next questions that kind of pop up into my mind, this isn't your property, obviously that brings up a host of liabilities on your part. How do you structure the contract? How do you make sure that you are also protected if the people that you're bringing into this person's property are, they trash it? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So a couple of things to dissect there too, right? And that's a great question. From a legal perspective, now this is not legal advice, of course, but the way that we structure this would be very simple. We sign typically the lease that the landlord would provide us, which is a regular state lease.
Okay.
Then we provide an additional addendum.
Yeah.
Where we are granted legal permission to sublet it, right? And then on top of that, from a liability perspective, there's a couple avenues you can go. The one-liner would be we as the host were protected by the platforms. So Airbnb offers up to $1 to $2 million in liability and damages every single reservation, right?
Wow, I did not know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, through AirCover.
Now again, standard for Airbnb is like if a host that comes from Airbnb trashes your house, Airbnb will pay for it. You don't have to go through your own insurance.
Yeah, correct. Now that's me as the host. Now we have the property owner who, again, it's like, then it becomes this dicey thing where it's like, okay, who submits the claim, who actually is liable, all this other stuff. And there's other factors there that make this a little bit more complex. But the simple way to make sure that everybody is protected is me as the arbitrager, I'm going to lean on the platform. The property owner, we typically will advise them, if you'd like an additional layer of protection for yourself, simply just alter your home insurance from like a regular rental policy to a short-term rental policy, right? Which is like, now everybody is just completely covered. There's no like ifs, ands, or buts about it. Make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So you've identified the area, you've found a property that fits our criteria. Now it's time to reach out to the actual owner. How does that conversation go? Because me as an owner, if I've listed it out there for a long term, that's what I want. I want somebody to be there for a long time. The thought of having a lot of people come through there, more wear and tear on the property. It's probably, where is my incentive there? How do you make it more attractive to the people that you're actually approaching?
I thought the same thing. When my friend first gave me this idea, I said, why on earth would a landlord want to do this, right? And fortunately, I went through that horrible experience with my property for this to click right away. So let me kind of spin this back to you, Gabe, right? You're a rental property owner. What keeps you up at night? Evictions, bad tenants, late payments. The property's a mess. You get calls in the middle of the night about the leaky toilet, or you have to pay an extra 10, 20% for a property manager, right? So now, me as an arbitrager, I'm going to come in the property and work this thing like a business, which means, what does that mean for you? On-time rent every single month. I'm not taking $1 more than your regular asking rent, right? The property's cleaned routinely, like multiple times a week. It's going to be in the same condition that it is at the end of year two as it is on day one. And guess what? I'm earning money out of the property, so I'm literally never going to leave. So it's like you as a landlord, you just get to sit on your butt and collect maximum rent. So the funny thing is uh, m- I do not struggle with landlords saying yes to this ever. It's more so just like, hey, does this property make sense for me? So I am actually in the position of authority of like I can say no to the deal, not really the landlord. They usually want to work with you if you present it that way. Does that
Huh.
make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. And specifically when you said, you are running this as a business, so you are going to be wanting to stay in this property forever. And that, I feel like that is a big selling point for people who own long-term rentals, is because the thing that I care about is I just don't want to have to flip this property every year. When the lease
Yeah.
runs out, I don't want to have to, clean it, get a new tenant, all that stuff. That's, it takes at least a month. So that's a whole month's rent that you're losing there. And so somebody's going to be staying there for, 10 years. That makes sense from the landlord's perspective.
hmm
Um, all right, so you found the landlord, you've negotiated it, you got a contract, everybody's protected. Now the property is in your possession, you can start renting it. What do you do from there? What are the first couple of steps that you run?
Yeah. So the thing I love about this business model, Gabe, is you can truthfully make this very passive, very, very passive. And that sounds insane considering it's a short-term rental business. It's like you're running a small
I was gonna
hospitality
say
business.
that you gotta
Yeah.
like talk to people. Yeah, when I do
Yeah.
Airbnbs, you're texting the owner, you're like, there's a lot of
So
stuff.
let me explain this. The very first couple of weekends we went live, keep in mind, 2 years ago, I knew nothing about this business. And the very first weekend we went live, I remember staying up till 3 in the morning, answering guest messages on a Friday night. And I was like, I never want to do this again. So the cool thing is because there are cleaners there so regularly, that means that you kind of have an additional set of eyes and ears on the property at all times, right?
Okay.
So here's what you can do. This is actually pretty incredible. Is if you could just automate these three things, if you could just plug in tools and people for these three things, you can actually almost entirely separate yourself from the business. Now, not like 100% entirely, but you can make your life 10 times easier. So the first is cleaning, right? You need people there regularly to clean the property, of course, and turn it over and make sure it's top notch.
Hmm.
What you can do is there's a lot of softwares these days to help you do that. Biggest one, no secret, there's one called Turno, where you can actually not only use the platform to recruit cleaners, they have the reputation on the platform, but you can hire them, communicate with them, have them fill out checklists on that platform, and even just plug that directly into your Airbnbs so they automatically get notified of bookings, extended stays, all that stuff, right?
Oh, okay. That was actually going to be one of my questions. Is it's not only the people that are coming to stay at your property, but it's also the cleaning staff. I feel like there's a lot of communication there. But if they're automatically being notified, these are not standard length stays. So if somebody leaves, they stay for one day and then they leave the next, and they're automatically being notified that they have to go there. That takes a lot of the headache out of the entire process. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And this is Turno, like Turno.
Correct. It used to be called Turnover B&B.
Oh, okay.
Now they're called Turno. Now that's one platform. There's a couple like that. And then there's a couple of other platforms you could actually just hire your own cleaners outside of that and then link them to like a property management software. But moral of the story is that's the easiest one-stop shop. So then you've got cleaning automated to some capacity. Now we've got to deal with, okay, how do we deal with guest communication or even communication with my cleaners? How do I kind of like slowly peel myself away from that, right? So what we did is we actually found virtual assistants, right? So like real people overseas, of course, that are essentially pennies on the dollar in the United States.
Yeah.
And what they do is they work around the clock uh, for very affordable rates to just communicate with your guests. The crazy thing is you can actually find some of these virtual assistants that were ex-Airbnb employees. Like they already know the Airbnb customer service
Oh,
world.
nice. Yeah.
They already know the claim process. It's pretty crazy. So my point is, you can hire a few of these folks for a couple $100 a month to literally just around the clock deal with guest messages, and then even train them to the point where they coordinate with your cleaners for you, coordinate with your handymen for you, and do all these things. So, of course, that doesn't happen overnight. You got to just like train them, implement them, hire them, all that stuff. But
And do they also handle your guest communications? So when people text at night, they'll respond.
100%. I haven't dealt with like a guest message in I can't even tell you the last time I have
Nice. Huh,
personally.
that's cool. So that's two. You said three pillars. You got your cleaners automated through Turno. You got
Yep.
your communications automated through your VAs. What's the third one?
Third would be pricing, right? Because like once you're live, what you ultimately want to do is adjust for seasonality, right? Because these are a short-term rental. I don't care what anyone says. It's going to fluctuate like
Yeah.
year round. Now, we're investors, Gabe. So like what we do is we look at what is the average profit margin and revenue based on a 12-month time frame. Because if you just look at it month by month, you're going to be like, oh my God, I'm on top of the world. And then I'm like losing money. And then you're going to be all over the place. You want to look at it from a 12-year or 12-month perspective. Okay. So there are other software tools that you can integrate with your short-term rentals that will automatically adjust the pricing year-round based on seasonality and demand, which means you stay booked and you also maximize revenue based on things in the area. So one of them is called Price Labs. This is not the only one, but this is one of them. And I'll tell you a really quick story. Are you a Taylor Swift fan?
My fiance is for sure, but
Okay.
Taylor has some good songs.
Believe it, this wasn't a trick question. So I wasn't trying to get you in trouble by the fiance, but the reason I asked you the question is I am not. I know nothing about Taylor Swift outside of, the music, things like that. So I have a bunch of short-term rentals in Pittsburgh, right? And I had no clue she had a concert because I don't listen to Taylor Swift, right? But the software knew. The software knew Taylor Swift was coming to town. It saw that all of the
Yeah,
rates in the area, in the hotels and all the other short-term rentals were skyrocketing.
yeah.
So lo and behold, I have no idea why. I check in that one weekend, each property's charging $1,200 a night and getting booked. So my point is, if you have a tool like that in place, it's not just about staying booked, it's about maximizing on opportunity.
Hmm.
So if you have those three things in check, though, you can quite literally peel yourself away from like 80 to 90% of the day-to-day operations of the business. It's actually pretty insane. And then you can truthfully create as much of a passive experience as you'd like. So, for the average person that's looking to make 5, 10K a month, just do the math. You find 5 of these properties netting you anywhere from 1 to 3K, and then you implement these softwares, you get your time and you get the cash flow that you want.
Sounds good to me. I like it.
It's cool.
But obviously, nothing is free. Everything, it does take money to get started. And so, what are the startup costs here? You found the property, you've negotiated. I'm sure you got to put your down payment for the property, like maybe 1 month's rent. So that's, let's say, $3,000. And then you've mentioned earlier that you are furnishing these places, these houses. So what is your cost to furnish it? What other startup costs do you have?
Startup costs are minimal. This is a low cash business. Now, you can't start it for free, of course. Now, biggest costs right out of the gate are just going to be security deposits, right? You rent a property for 2 to 3K, you got to pay that 2 to 3K. Oftentimes, if you present it to the landlord the right way, you might even get 1 to 2 months rent for free upfront, which has happened to me quite a bit, and my clients. But ultimately, you got the security deposit and then maybe first month's rent, maybe. So with that being said, you get your LLC created, stuff like that. You might have a couple $100s in cost there. I'd recommend if you have like 5 to 10K in liquid, you really have set yourself up for everything. Okay. I've heard another guest of yours actually even try to creatively come up with the cost associated with the security deposit by like sending himself an invoice on QuickBooks and all this other stuff. So like you might be able to finagle that, but I would just say if you have 5 to 10K in cash, you're more than set up. Now, we got to furnish that first property. Let's just say it costs 10K, right?
Okay.
That's when I would leverage 0% interest business credit. This is like when I figured this out, this was like striking gold in the US.
One of my partners, he's he makes tons of money, but he still just loves getting those credit cards with 0% interest and using them. And I'm just like, man, what are you doing?
Gabe, it's great because like here's the thing is, we're investors. So like our inherent nature is I am not going to spend capital in my pocket if I don't have to because I can use that on another investment opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So it's like in the US, and again, I might be like totally botching the actual complexity of this, but it's like if I have a 600 plus credit score, I create an LLC, I go to the bank, I say, I just created a business. Could you help me out? The bank says, here's 20, 30K, 0% interest business credit card because I want to earn you as a client. And listen, I mean, that's pretty amazing. If you could just inject 20, 30K into your business venture that has no interest charge to it, why not utilize it, right? So I would advise that. and just put all the furniture on that, and then you pay it down with the profits from your property, and then that would allow you to scale more quickly with only having to use that 5 to 10K in your pocket. So
And
from an
when you're saying
yeah,
furniture, I mean, we're talking, this is a completely vacant property, and so you're bringing in obviously couches, chairs, beds, that kind of thing, but also you're bringing in linens, you're bringing in decorations. What other kind of things that you generally wouldn't think of that you need to spend to make these properties nice? Are you changing
yep,
out locks?
mhm.
Oh,
So it's really a combination of furniture, linens, kitchenware, and smart locks. Like, that's the essentials.
okay.
Obviously, every project's a little bit different, but the cool thing is like, Gabe, at the end of the day, we're a business, which means, if you're gonna operate like a smart investor and try to maximize your ROI, like, you and I both realize we don't book an Airbnb because I noticed that the couch in the photo is a $10,000 restoration hardware couch, right? I have no clue what that is. It's based on how good the photos look. So my point is, you really don't need to furnish it for 30K in order to make a return. You could probably furnish it for like 8 to 10. So, no sense in doing that because it doesn't really impact your ROI.
Do
Is that
you hire somebody to come, like somebody that has an eye for design? If I furnished a house, it would just not look that great. No offense
Yeah,
to myself, but I'm assuming you probably hire somebody that knows design. They have an eye for colors and they put it together well.
for
Or
sure.
do you do it yourself? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's funny. If I were to show you photos of my first couple of Airbnbs, it would be obvious that I tried to do it myself. I did not know what the hell I was doing. So what we actually use, and our clients use her now. She's a virtual interior designer specifically for short term rentals. She's overseas, and it's super cool, Gabe. What I do is I just send her photos from my iPhone of the place. I say, here are the dimensions. Help me out. And in 2 days, she'll send me a mood board and a purchase list of every single item. And the best part is I'm like, hey, I want to stay under 8K in this project. Done. So it's just like, it just makes my life so much easier because I am not an interior designer by nature. I'm sure most of us are not. So that makes my life a lot easier. So,
Nice. That's a
um,
fun job, just going around. If you like design, just selecting couches and colors for a certain area. That's I'm sure she enjoys that.
for sure. And one last thing I'll say on this topic is like, what is the cash on cash return? Because like we as like real estate investors, that's like the first thing we look at when we buy a property. So here's the crazy thing. Now you don't get the equity benefits of buying real estate, but if we just break down the back of napkin math for a second, it's like I'm putting in 10K in furniture and maybe another 3K in security deposits, 2K in security deposits. So now we're talking 12K all in, right? Now if that property cash flows me $1,000 a month, that's 12K over the course of the year. That is literally an 100% cash on cash return. Literally 100%, which is outrageous. Now, you don't get the equity. You don't get the same 30-year relationship that you do with a property. But it's like, why don't I
Well,
just
it's more of a business than it is an investment. You're not. I,
exactly.
I wouldn't really think of it as an investment. I would think of it like I'm starting a business. I'm running a business, and this is how I'm building active cash that, if I would like, I can put it into an investment. Long-term rental, self-storage facility, whatever. But it's a way to create that active income with little down in real estate. Which really, there aren't a lot of strategies in real estate that you can make money with little money. Well, everybody says you can make money with no money in real estate. That's bullshit. You need money to make money in real estate. But this is a legitimate way to make. You don't need a lot of money to get started. So I've heard of this strategy a few times and I've really liked it. I've actually looked into it myself. But I keep telling myself shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Focus on what you're good at. But I do really like the strategy. I think it's pretty unique. I do have to push us out. We've blasted through the 20-minute mark, but before we
Oh,
move on,
gee.
I always like to hear the P&L from every type of model that we're running. So, what does a P&L look like for your model? What is the top line generally? What are you guys doing per property? What are the
Mhm.
expenses that you have? And then you said obviously your net is usually 2,000 to 3,000 that you're making per month.
Yeah. So I do want to add too that like some of our portfolio are co-hosting deals. Really, really quick touch on this. I know we're
Oh
short on
yeah.
time. This
Mhm.
is where instead of us actually leasing the property, we just take a percentage of managing the property for the owner.
Oh,
So you
okay.
might find an Airbnb that's like clearly failing because they don't know what they're doing. And then you just say, hey, let me run it for you. I'll take care of all the back end. You could still automate it between you and I, Gabe, and then you take 10, 20, 30%, right? So this is a great, great strategy for those that don't even have that 5 to 10K in capital or good credit in order to get an arbitrage, right? So, but anyway, just giving you kind of like the brass tacks. Our portfolio, like I said, is probably around like the range of like 1.4 to like 1.6 a year in revenue. That's top line revenue. The reason why I'm like all over the place with that is because some of those units we launched very recently. So it's like we haven't even realized that revenue yet, right?
Got it.
Average cash flow on an arbitrage deal is anywhere from like $800 to like $2,000 a month. So moral of the story is per deal, like the average single family home that I recommend people would start with will usually be in the revenue range of 50 to 70K a year. And that'll be a cash flow range of like $800 to $2,000 a month in pure profit, right? That's usually what we're looking at. Obviously our portfolio at this point nets us anywhere from like 30 to 60 depending on the month. But, like the average cash flow range is going to be around like the 30 to 40 range, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's still pretty good, specifically because you're not having to bring a down payment. You're just bringing the initial setup and then you get rolling. So 800 to 2,000 a month, that's nothing to wag your finger at. That's pretty good.
Cool.
All right, man. That wraps it up. I'm going to push us into the quick question round. Are you ready?
Sure, hit me.
All right. It starts with education. It could be any form. Could be a conference you've gone to, a mentorship program you've been a part of, movie you've seen, anything. I just need 2 recommendations, one for general life wisdom and then one for real estate.
Okay. Without trying to think about this too hard, general life wisdom, a book that really hit me hard recently was Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. If anybody's heard of it, it's actually not a religious book per se, but very powerful for just kind of questioning your life path and a way to approach your level of fulfillment. So really, really cool book that impacted me as an entrepreneur. As for, I think you said one personal, one investing, right?
Yep.
Investing, another good book that I read.
General wisdom or general real estate or business. Doesn't have to be
Real
specific.
estate business. One that I read that I always come back to from a real estate perspective is the book on long distance real estate investing by David Green back when he was with Bigger Pockets. Not that I think the book is really valuable just because it's written in a way to help you with long distance investing, but it actually has all the principles necessary for real estate investing anywhere or business anywhere because it's about setting up a proper team of people. It's about finding good property managers, finding good this and that, yada, yada, people to help you facilitate deals. If you get the fundamentals down there, you can apply that to anything in real estate investing. So I really, really like that book. That's just one that I reference a lot.
Perfect. I love it. All right, let's go to the next question. This is for your younger self. Let's go back to the version of you who had no idea about real estate, no idea about Airbnb arbitrage. Go back to him, look him in the eye, give him one piece of advice moving forward.
You touched on this a little bit earlier, which was I don't want to get shiny object syndrome, and I just want to stay focused. Burn the boats. Burn the boats. That is an expression from, whatever conquistador back in whatever time frame. I don't even remember, but burn the boats, meaning whatever it is that you decide to do, just pick it and burn the bridges and just go all in on that one thing because that is a superpower to accelerating your success with it. Just hyper focus on, even if it's just 1 year, worst case scenario, you don't make as much money as you wanted to, you still made it work. But you can't do this thing where you're like half in and I'm going to try this and I'm going to try this because then nothing's going to succeed. Just burn the boats, go all in.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I don't think anybody has said that, but it is the thing that made me successful really is I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I was working corporate for so long. It was like 8 years, almost a decade. And I was like flipping houses on the side, doing wholesales, but I never really got traction in real estate until I lost my job. And then I was like, I'm all in. This is what I'm doing. I'm not going to fail. And at that point, once you have burned the bridges, once you have decided or actually really have no choice but to move forward, that is what makes you find success. It will just come because you have no other option. And so I like that advice. And it's not something that a lot of people hear about.
That's awesome. Last thing I'll say on that, when I was in corporate, I was a sales rep and I was terrible at sales. I was terrible. And it took me a while to get good at it. And if I could reflect, one of the most fulfilling portions of my life was when I was just obsessed with my sales territory and nothing else in the world mattered. I didn't see friends. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. And it was just like, how do I grow this business? How do I grow this business? But you just channel all this ridiculous energy that you don't even know that you have. So you just got to obsess over it.
Nice. I love it. All right. Next question is about the US. It is a big place. There is a lot of opportunity out there. Give me the single metro you're most excited about starting a new Airbnb arbitrage business in today.
Man, good question. Good question. We pivoted our strategy to taking on big apartment complexes. This is not a beginner strategy, but this is like when instead of me going to one landlord and saying, let me rent your house, you go to an apartment complex, you say, hey, give me 5. And you do that exact strategy. We did this with 36 apartments in Philly. We partnered in with some people. There's a video on it on YouTube and stuff. Where I'm going with this is I like to diversify. I want to try to find a different city that like is a different seasonality than the Northeast. I think I'm going to start pivoting into potentially like West Coast, like Arizona, Texas, just because it's a totally different seasonal market than the Northeast. So not really directly answering your question, but we will see.
Okay. And that's interesting. You mentioned, multifamily, approaching multifamily owners and saying, "Hey, let me take a number of them and do this specific strategy." Because, if you find the right multifamily complex, we're gonna have to do a second episode on that one. There's too many questions that pop into my mind there. We're gonna move on, but that's an interesting idea. All right. Next question is about finding deals. It all starts with getting in contact with the owner, in your case, and penning that agreement. So what is your favorite way to generate leads and find new deals?
For this model specifically, for rent by owner listings, 2 great platforms for that. One is called hotpads.com. It's owned by Zillow. There is a filter on Hotpads that will allow you to sort your rentals by for rent by owner. That will save you tremendous amount of time. Same thing in apartments.com. This is a recent feature they added. For rent by owner, skip the middleman. I just want to go directly to Gabe.
Nice. I like it.
Yep.
All right. Next question is about lessons learned. Not every deal that we get into goes the way we expect it. In fact, many times things go wrong, and that's when we get to learn a lesson. So what was the deal that went a little sideways for you, and what was the lesson you pulled from it?
I had a really, really big arbitrage opportunity where we pulled in multiple people to take a bunch of units. That went south mainly because the building that we were partnering with did not follow through on what they promised us. And it created a dicey situation. I guess the biggest lesson learned outside of the obvious one, which is like really make sure the partners that you're getting into with are who they say they are, what, and they're going to follow through with what they say, and you vet out all potential risks and all that stuff. I guess the biggest lesson learned though is that like no matter what big investment or entrepreneurship opportunity you're going to get in, no matter how much due diligence you do, no matter how much preparation you do, no matter how many books you read, no matter how many courses you take, no matter how much, whatever, if you think it's the perfect time, shit's going to happen. It's going to happen. Yeah. And you can't like be afraid to just endure shit at some point in life and let fear be the decision maker for you. So it's like, it's not an if, it's a when. And sometimes those are the most important moments where you look back in life and you're like, I'm 10 times more resilient now because of that. So it's going to happen. Just know it's going to happen. And then don't lose your cool in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. Things always go wrong. And there's most of the time, it's not that you screwed up your due diligence or anything. It's just that it's something that you could not have predicted. Maybe there was an earthquake. Maybe there was a hurricane, something that is out of your control. But you can just expect it. Expect things to go wrong. And then when it does go wrong, you're not as affected. You're not as emotionally affected. And you can just focus in, solve the problem, and move on.
Yeah.
And on the converse of that, sometimes the stars align and everything goes right. So this is the next question. What was your highlight reel? What was the deal that everything went perfect for you and you walked off into the sunset?
I want to say that it was when we first started pivoting into these large apartment opportunities. Our very first apartment opportunity was a roll of the dice. We took 7 apartments. And we were like, I don't know if this is going to work. I've heard of other people doing apartments and like, it's kind of like iffy and this and that. So we followed through. We had a good relationship with this apartment complex. And Gabe, I didn't even realize it until the year ended and I looked at the income statement, and those 7 apartments cash flowed profit net 89 grand. And I was like, dude, this is the way. Like, we got to do this more often. So, that was an eye opener for me. That was the deal that I think created the momentum for us to get into bigger apartment complex opportunities and open that door to us.
Yeah, having that success, especially when you're trying a new strategy, having that early success is so important. You mentioned like your first property, everything went wrong. That was the same for me. My first flip, it was a triplex. Everything went wrong, but at the end, we made $90,000, and that was the most I had ever seen in my life in one check. And
Wow.
the light bulb went off, and I realized like, yes, this works. Even when things go wrong, it works. And so, yeah, having that early success is super important.
That's
Um,
awesome.
all right, and then moving us on to the next question. This is about team building. None of us are islands. It takes a team to build a business. So, what is your advice to people out there building a team?
You're only as strong as your weakest link, and building building a team requires you to lead by example. Leadership is like a full-time gig. It's a full-time job. This is not something that like you could just hire people, put in place, and then never have to deal with again. So advice would be top talent is very important. Sometimes it's worth paying extra for. And again, you're only as strong as your weakest link, meaning your weakest team member. So assess who you've got in your team and make sure that the 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 the, the person who's not the shining star is still worth their weight, and that's ultimately going to still help you get what you achieve.
Cool. I like it. All right, that leads us to the last question. This is for the listeners. You've given us a lot to think about. I'm sure people want to reach out, get in contact with you. This is a two-parter. Where can they find you? And then what can they expect when they reach out?
Sure. Okay. Well, Gabe, one of the things I love about you is you're always showing up constantly for the audience and you provide a lot of massive value. So I want to do the same. So what I'm going to do is instead of just being like, hey, here's my website, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give anyone who's listening specifically to this episode, something that I don't usually offer that I reserve for actual clients, right? So I'm going to give you what I like to call a cash flow quick start kit, very conveniently named, right?
I
So
like it.
here, here's who it's for. It's for a 9 to 5 professional or first-time entrepreneur investor who's looking to, start their 5 to 10K a month cash flow portfolio through Airbnb without having to buy properties, right? So here's what you can do. First thing I'm going to give you is the Airbnb market launch blueprint. This is just a 5-step guide to finding markets that will be profitable for Airbnb and properties within that market that will be profitable for Airbnb, even if you think my city won't work, right? The second thing is I'll give you a quick Airbnb game plan session. This is the first thing I do with like actual clients that come into my world. It's just a deep dive session where we look at where you're at right now and we build an action plan to that you guys can take and implement immediately to get your first listing. So if you want all this stuff, all I'm asking you to do, follow me on Instagram. It's Vinny, Vinny, BNB like Airbnb, and just send me the word REI Club for this episode. So REI Club. So once again, if you want the blueprint and you want the Airbnb session, just DM me the word REI Club at Vinny, Vinny, BNB on Instagram, and I'll personally send them over. Cool?
Perfect. Sounds good. I will put that link in the show notes. So if you guys want to reach out, just click the little more in the description. It'll pull down that full description in there. You can find Vincent's link.
Cool.
All right, man. That wraps it up. Thank you very much for hopping on the show.
Rock on. Thanks a lot, Gabe.
Absolutely. For everybody who's with us today, thank you guys for showing up. You are the reason we do this. So if you guys have any questions, reach out to me, Gabe with realestateinvestingclub.com. If you guys want to support the show, just leave us a review. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great week. Keep rocking real estate, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.